All right, on the show today, it's Great Ground Beebs Show. We got some microgreens coming over. My face are super close in the shot here. Yeah. It's my first panning shot in a documentary style. How you folks doing?
What's up, dude? How are you doing, baby?
Who are you?
I'm Cass.
I'm Cory. We, over the last year, have started a business at our home called Grow Pine Street. We grow microgreens, and we're planning on doing a lot of other things with urban agriculture. Cass, before we did this, had converted a lot of our front yard to like a garden space, and so we are interested in all forms of urban agriculture, and we're looking to learn more and as much about it as we can.
Oh yeah, I know who you guys are. I'm right down the street all the time.
Yeah, right.
But I've never been in your basement before, and this is fantastic. Like, this is a really cool setup here.
Yeah, it is. We're like, our basement is, it went from the worst place in our house to one of the coolest places in our house pretty quickly.
Lots of oxygen down here, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
Fresh.
yeah.
And so you sell microgreen gardens to local people around this town here, huh?
Yeah, we sell microgreens. We sell subscriptions to salads and other versions that you can combine microgreens into.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so our basement here, where we're at now, is we've got these vertical towers where we grow microgreens, and there's a subscription service. People sign up for it. We have reusable jars, little mason jars. We have a couple different varieties of mason jar, you know what I'm saying? Different shapes, sizes, assortments. And we fill those jars. We take them. People leave their jars from the previous week. And yeah, it's a nice little system, and it's going really good for us, like as a business, but as just like
grow Pine Street.
Yeah, and
yeah.
but like, microgreens are crazy.
Yeah, they're tasty. I've grown a little bit here and there, like in a jar like that, actually.
Yeah,
like once or twice.
Right. So
but, like,
so
nothing crazy.
Right.
You know?
So sprouting is like probably more what you're talking to.
Yes, exactly.
So that's how we got started with this specifically too.
Okay.
There's a podcast that I really like, Found My Fitness podcast, and the woman who does that, her name's Rhonda Patrick. She's a doctor.
Oh yeah, I know.
You know
her.
Rhonda Patrick?
Yeah, she's
right.
amazing.
Yeah,
For sure.
So she's always preaching broccoli sprouts.
Yeah, I think that's why I grew them.
Right. Yeah, well, that's why I grew them too. Right.
And here we are.
So right. But the thing is like, I don't really like sprouting.
Yeah.
Specifically, like, just for me personally, there are people who do it really well.
So is this not sprouting?
It's a little bit different, and I'll explain to you why. Yeah. So sprouting has a tendency to like get a little bit nasty sometimes. Yes,
Very
right.
wet.
So it's really wet, and
yeah, they were fresh and tasty the first day, and then the second day I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna throw.
I don't
these
even want to
away.
smell these or be around these.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, right, sprouting and microgreens. So sprouting, or any little thing like this, is anytime you introduce water to a seed, right, it's going to germinate, and like the sprout is going to come out of that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I like kept them in the darkness, right? Like and then sprouted them that way. Whereas you guys like tons of LEDs out here and
right. So
microgreens are the next step
Right.
after sprouts.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
once
Okay,
they're
so they're
introduced to light.
you sprout them first, and then
you introduce them to the lights.
Okay.
And that's what will make it a
Okay.
microgreen. There's also some other differences. Generally, when you sprout, you don't use like a growing medium.
yeah,
There's no soil. There's nothing
Yeah.
like that.
yeah,
So
okay, yeah.
right, and so actually, not just as a grower, but like the Food and Drug Administration
Right.
regulates sprouts and microgreens differently.
Okay.
Because there's that like extra tendency for
Whoa.
sprouts to get super
Right,
nasty.
right,
They're
yeah.
like, yeah, if you're gonna do this, you have to actually know what you're doing. Whereas
Okay.
microgreens,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
treated more like a vegetable. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
right,
Yeah,
right,
they're treated
yeah.
under the same laws as a vegetable.
Yeah, because when you have like ultraviolet lights of any kind, it's gonna kill whatever's on top of them. You know, like
Okay.
are these ultraviolet?
Are they ultraviolet? I want to say yes, just because I think it
yeah.
sounds cool.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know.
I thought that like plants could only grow with ultraviolet light. Like,
yeah, that makes sense. Duh.
Sunlight has ultraviolet like.
Yeah. So actually, these lights are full spectrum lights.
Okay, so that probably includes.
Yes, it does.
Think, yeah.
And if I were to say the one area of things I know the least about when it comes to these, it's definitely light spectrum.
Okay, yeah.
You say light spectrum, and that's where my knowledge stops.
Because they're the same as radio waves, they're just at different frequencies, and then and then, it goes to like gamma rays and X-rays, and it's like a whole like spectrum of
of different lights, and actually
sound to visibility to like actual
and actually these white lights over here where you first saw in the first shot are not full spectrum lights.
Okay.
And these purple lights behind us are full spectrum lights, and that's been a really interesting. Like these have a less of the light spectrum in them, the white ones apparently. Yeah. But what we've come to notice is that's not necessarily better or worse for everything.
Okay. Like it's really dependent on the variety of plant that we put in the lights.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And some things have still responded better to the white lights than the pink lights, even though they're getting less of a spectrum.
Okay.
They just don't require the other things, and when you pump them full of certain things, they.
Right.
I don't know. Kind of interesting.
It's kind of an experiment, as
as this all has been for us.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna bring it back to change gears just a little bit here, but I know you from playing drums forever.
Yeah.
And I know you from ballet dancing and dancing in general, right?
Yeah.
I know you guys, as I do, have a tendency to like gravitate towards understanding and utilizing free time well, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, what is a hobby, and like how do you approach it? And this seems like a next step. Is this like replacing old hobbies, or is this just like an add-on, or is it like?
Well, I would say that this was definitely born during lockdown.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to dance, and you weren't drumming, and so we just needed to do something with our time, and we are really passionate about growing plants and eating healthy food. Yeah. So it turned from a hobby to a full-time job.
Yeah, it kind of is at that stage, honestly.
It's really developed into that. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are changing gears right now and all of that.
Yeah.
Like, it's healthy though. I think the change is like good for people just in general.
Yeah.
Because they can kind of like reevaluate. They can kind of see where they are, who they are, like. And what do they really want to do? Like, what are they trying to accomplish here right now? You know?
Yeah.
And then you have, like, broader spectrum questions that arise from that, too. And I think that this answers a lot of those, kind of questions that, like, how do we get food to cities? How do we get food to people where there aren't any farms, just in general? And, like, what are the... And then, so this is the question I was talking about earlier. Like, what is the difference between the energy costs of, like, the sun is out there, it's producing, megawatts of joules just free to, like, falling on the ground all the time. Right?
Yep.
Like, so we have to utilize the sun every chance we got. And I know you guys do. You guys got a ton of stuff outside, too.
Right.
Which is, like, you have to. Like, I mean... The advantages of microgreens growing inside, especially during the winter, I mean, in Ohio, right?
Yeah,
like, that's obvious,
Right.
And so the advantages of that would be, like, your health, like, the freshness of it. Like, there's probably more nutrients in these greens, at this stage. Yeah, so what would the differences, do you think, be between... I mean, obviously, that's a pretty loaded question.
Right, yeah, sure.
I mean, like, there's how much oil do we, use to truck, lettuces in from, urban areas, or rural areas into urban areas. And, like, obviously there's different... I mean, I don't know. In my mind, I'm like... All right, we need to develop, architecture to, like, utilize sunlight and to have reflectors on everything to, like, really bring, maybe, like, we have, like, holes in walls, so that sunlight can get in more.
Yeah.
And, like,
Absolutely.
You know?
So, okay, so... Yeah, so to back up all the way through
like
all
5
of that.
Questions.
Yeah. And even to the question before that you were talking about, Cass, like this filling as a hobby, switching to a job, however we want to think of it. So really, yes, gardening, like I had mentioned earlier, Cass and I had moved our front lawn into a garden space almost entirely over the past couple of years, and then during lockdown we were able to like evaluate what we had. So obviously when you compare this to like outside or something, you know, we had to make all these decisions. How do we want to grow and whatever, because we knew we wanted to do this, like we knew we wanted to provide food, healthier food to the people in our area. How are we going to do that? Like that's what we said, right?
Cool.
And so then when it was still in hobby stage, like we had been sprouting, we had been doing all this different stuff. Well, the one thing for us, like regardless of how things stack up against outside, inside, whatever, is like we already have this basement, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a lot of where our choice for this came, is like, okay, we have this basement that we're not using hardly at all.
Utilizing free space.
Exactly. We are paying for this space right now.
Yeah.
We're not using it. How can we use space that's already being underutilized?
Yeah.
So what this can solve in terms of that, or in terms of a lot of things, is like, is it as good as growing as outside? Is it as efficient? Maybe not, but is it more efficient than having a lot of dead space and stuff like that sitting around your house? Right. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Or sitting around any old industrial place that doesn't make sense as anything. Like, this can be implemented so many different places that are being underutilized, right? Like, like,
definitely.
You know, and so that's part of it. I think we already had this space. We were already trying to solve a little bit of the problem, like how do we want to do this? How do we want to bring this to people? And so I think,
and like what we were talking about before, like it definitely is a thing where you can't really utilize like microgreens like this at this level, like and be able to ship them someplace, you know?
Right.
Like you can't do that really, you know? It has to be grown locally.
Yeah.
And so in applications like that, especially in cities or, you know, like even our town, you know, like it makes a lot of sense for that, because that's a whole commodity, and it's like preventative medicine in a lot of ways.
Yes.
You know, like, and you're able to like control like on a smaller scale, like what's being put on them, how you're feeding them, like pesticide wise, fertilizer wise, just like the whole spectrum,
right?
You know?
Yeah. So yeah, you can control it all, and like you said, it's it is a very fresh way of doing things, you know. You mentioned a little bit earlier, so what a lot of the research has shown and what a lot of we've read about is like the plant has a lot of the nutrients that the full head of cabbage, like for example, we have some cabbage microgreens over there that I'm looking at, like that are in that thing are already contained
just
within that single sprout.
Exactly,
just super condensed. Not as like a full comparison, I don't think, but density wise there are more nutrients in these for the same amount of plant matter for the full vegetables. Absolutely.
That's I think going to become more important as, you know, even populations rise too, you know, like trying to like, you know, produce those types of nutrients that people need, you know. And a lot of, I mean, like, I don't know how much you know about like soil like composition in a lot of places. I've heard that there's a lot of different like phosphate runoff, a lot of like magnesium that like isn't in the soil anymore. It's like our soils are becoming nutrient deficient now, because like a lot of just like these commercial places are kind of stripping them, you know, with their monocultures and then whatever chemicals go on top of them, and like not really being aware of I mean, there's like the whole like mycelium like kind of net that goes in the soil that like really like we didn't even really know about until like, you know, 15 years ago or something like that. I mean, that's a huge part of like the phosphate runoff, I know, like, and the ability to like actually hold phosphate in the soil and then it directs it to plants and things like that. And that is like at the baseline kind of like how we function as people, right? Like that's like our minerals, that's how we're getting those nutrients in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Unless you're taking supplements or something like that, and then that's where those become important.
Right.
Especially if you are shopping at the supermarket all the time, and you don't have any other vegetable source. Like you're eating all these vegetables thinking you're getting minerals, but you're not.
Right.
And then so like you're like, well, at least there's fiber in there. I'm gonna pop these vitamins too, and then like
right.
I'm like, I hope this does the trick,
Right.
Like
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I think that diets obviously are like insane in this country.
Yeah.
Right? And
yeah.
And so that's a lot of where this came from for Cass and I. We just wanted to eat healthier food, and then so that was sprouting. We were like, we need to eat healthier, and then it was like, okay, this is kind of a pain, so let's do this next thing, even though we got to buy some lights. And then it was like, wait, there's other people who want to eat healthier too, and with what we already have here, they could obviously try this. So it's just grown and grown and grown.
Nice.
But I think that diets are going to be innovated soon, like Beyond Meat and all this different stuff that's whatever. I can picture a future kind of like what you're talking about with a lot of innovations in agriculture completely changing our diets. Like it doesn't necessarily make sense to, like, you can't live off of microgreens, right? Like it's not going to be all the calories you need. But like if you think of it as seriously like a mineral vitamin boost, right?
Yeah.
So you don't need that much of this stuff. Like you need less of this than the typical vegetables you need. Or so they say.
It's a superfood of sorts.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so in areas where it's maybe harder to get vegetables, or urban areas where farming is difficult or whatever it is, the more and more I've gotten into this, the more and more it makes sense to me that okay, we can grow these at a pretty good cost, like for a superfood, like it's pretty cost effective to grow in this manner, and so to just be able to load people up on vitamins in these areas that are otherwise, like you said, otherwise you're shipping this stuff in from who knows how far, like in the middle of December in New York City.
For sure.
How do you get fresh vegetables? Well, you don't. Unless you'd grow it indoors. Unless you do this. There's obviously exceptions to that. Whatever. But you know what I mean.
I'm going to throw something at you guys. It's a little left field, but like I was studying this last night because of this interview, right? And like I started getting into like, like oxygen, how like where most of the oxygen is produced is in the ocean apparently, and like in the coral reefs and algae actually produce a lot of it. Okay. These things called diatoms, they're real crazy looking. They're like, they have these like little glass shields around them, and like they look like little crystals, but there's algae in them. And they produce like, just the diatoms produce like 20% of all the world's oxygen basically. Wow. And they live around the coral reefs and all that. So I started getting into like, I'm like, okay, well, how do I grow my own algae, in my house? Because apparently algae also sucks like carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere at a rate like 10 times that of like terrestrial plants.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was a guy at MIT, of course, that developed these little like, the coral, he called them, like little like panels that were like clear, you could see through them, and then he like would offset them and like on a big grid on his wall where like the sunlight would come in from his window, and then like he would like grow little algae and then like eat whatever was in there, like 2 grams of it a day. Like, and each one's set up to be able to be harvested like every 16 days. There's 16 panels, that kind of like, and I don't know, I just thought it was a really cool idea, like, and I would just like run it by you guys.
We'll add that to the list.
Cool.
Yeah. I like it a lot.
Because I was trying to find how to buy one of those systems online, and I couldn't find it.
Interesting.
Like, and I was like, man, I really want to grow some algae right now.
Cass?
Yeah.
You're down?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
Yeah, especially like in your living space. I feel like that would be like hugely beneficial, you know, because you're just like producing a ton more oxygen in your environment.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. It's like a perfect example of like health, wellness, farming, food meets science. Which is happening a ton right now.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
like you're talking
sure.
about a dude from MIT producing oxygen using plants and all this type of stuff, which you're seeing like all this kind of stuff. We were kind of talking about just technology meeting all these different fields and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Earlier. And like that's it's like a crazy example, which illustrates how deep this is getting, you know, how crazy it's going. Yeah,
like what is it, like what happens when you have like a higher rate of oxygen just in your environment that you live, you know what I mean?
Right.
What happens when that oxygen producing source is also giving, like you're eating it at the same time and it's giving you all of these minerals, you know?
Right.
Like it's, I think a thing that we need to concentrate on a whole lot more, you know, just because of like how densely populated everything is, how much, you know, particulates and carbon are going into the air all the time, you know. Like it's obviously huge. Like we don't know what life is like. I mean, we were born in like the 80s and 90s, right? Like we don't know what the world was like before there was just millions of cars on the road everywhere, you know. Like like, and everything, like we have power and we have TVs, and that's, you know, we burn coal to do that, you know.
Right.
It's like but you know, as kids you don't know that, you know, like
Air
was probably way sweeter.
Right.
Got superpowers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and kids born, I mean, there's kids that don't even remember 9/11 or anything like that, you know, have always lived in this like past 2000 world, you know.
Yeah.
And it's definitely like a weird time. 2000s to 21st century is a weird, like was a weird shift when it switched to 21st century. And I don't know if that's just psychological to people too, you know, just because it's like, oh, we're in the 21st century, we got to be different now, you know.
Right.
Like back in the 90s, Conan O'Brien was like, in the year 2000. But yeah, I mean, like in every movie, you know, like was like in, you know, 2001 Space Odyssey, you know, 2010, like
right.
All, you know, every movie was just past 2000, everything's gonna, you know, freak out, you know. Yeah. I don't know where I was going with that, honestly.
Yeah, no,
I'm just kind of talking. Sometimes I just talk a lot.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah, but yeah, I can't wait to buy a salad from you guys here, you know. That would be fantastic.
Sweet, awesome.
Yeah, anything else you guys want to say? Maybe we'll take some shots around the place.
Yeah,
like,
we could show some other stuff out here. Anything else about microgreens? Or any of the things that we've got going on down here?
Like, are you're growing beans as well, right? Like,
well, okay, so yeah, like, let's just talk about microgreens for a second.
Okay.
So, yeah. It's probably a good time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so microgreens, you take the seed of any vegetable that that all of the what am I trying to say, Cass? All of the parts of that plant are edible, right?
Okay.
So that's what that's what makes a good candidate for a microgreen.
Because
so
there's some that have like the stem, you don't eat that or whatever. Like
right, exactly,
there are some
right.
that would be poisonous.
Right, like
stage.
you don't eat. You're
The
not supposed to eat tomato leaves and stuff like that, and stuff like that. So right, a microgreen, you take the seed of any vegetable whose all parts are edible, and you basically sprout it, then you introduce it to lights, and so we do pea, we do mustard, we do cabbage, and you know they all kind of fall under these different classifications, like pea or bean or these different things. They're more called like shoots.
Yeah.
Because you know, like pea shoots. If you've ever grown peas out in the garden, they're like long tendrils that will vine and stuff like that. So we just grow them till like maybe they're 6 inches.
Yeah.
Which like if you've ever thinned peas out in the garden or like thinned plants out in the garden, like when they're at their smallest stage, that's basically microgreens. We just purposely grow a bunch of them at that stage, right?
That's cool.
So pea, sunflower is another one, which is kind of interesting to think that all of the parts of a sunflower are edible. Yeah. But maybe like not the flowers and stuff, I guess.
Right. But they don't flower.
Right.
Yeah.
And so whatever. So And
interesting, because sunflowers, you think of the stalks are real kind of like fibrous too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
once they get big. Yeah. We were just starting a fire this afternoon. My kid wanted to start a fire. Yeah. And he was using some sunflower stalks from our previous year. Yeah. And they were decently smoking and smoldering.
It's amazing. It's amazing the amount of like finesse that you have to like kind of notice. Like you have to notice like the nuances of these plants too. I remember like foraging for mushrooms a few years ago, and we came across these like orange chicken of the woods mushrooms, you know?
Yeah.
And we're like, should we eat these? Like, and I'm like looking it up on the phone, and I'm like, it says they're edible, so we picked them, you know? Yeah. And then like they were like still like squishy, and apparently there's like a small window of like where you can eat those where they're best. Okay. And we just happened to pick them like right at the right time.
Perfect.
You know?
Sweet.
Yeah. We cooked them up in some oil in the pan, and like they were just the most fantastic, you know, mushrooms I ever had. You know,
I bet. Yeah.
Completely on accident, but like, you know, just reading about it, I'm just like, wow, there's like small windows of a lot of these different plants.
Yeah. For sure, definitely. Yeah, we've definitely noticed that. Like, the sunflowers specifically, some of the beans and stuff like that. After like, you know, on the 10th day of growth, say, they're like perfect, and on the 12th day, they're like almost inedible sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. It's strange. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then they change. They're like changing their growth. They're growing into a different plant. They're growing into like a producer now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, instead of just being the sprout, and then they're like, okay, now we're like a real plant. And then after that, we produce these other things. Right. You know, it's like there's like stages of development. Almost.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
And and so just a couple other little quick things. So another thing about microgreens, we do have some like fertilizer, like liquid fertilizer here. Yeah. But because we only take them to like their babyest stage. Yeah. First of all, the growing medium that we use is coconut coir. Okay. So it's ground up coconut husks. Huh. And that has no nutrients in it whatsoever. Weird. Like it's literally just used as a sponge, right? It's just a sponge. Yeah. And so most of the time we don't use any nutrients at all in our water. Okay. And we also use that coconut coir. So these seeds have everything they need to get to this stage without any extra nutrients or without any nutrients from the soil that they're sitting in, even because the soil doesn't. The coconut coir is just like it doesn't have anything in it. It's just an innate material that's a sponge. It just holds water. Oh, okay. Basically. So
interesting.
I think, you know, like in the past, I don't know what material they sprouted on. Yeah. There's a lot of different things. They use like hemp. They use like jute pads, which is kind of like rope and stuff like that. So they can use a lot of different things. But I imagine that there will also be a lot of innovations and stuff in that, and like in the future of urban farming and stuff.
You were talking about
there's perlite, which is a type of rock, which is like a porous rock. Yeah. I know like a lot of cannabis growers use like a mix of like perlite and coconut coir together. Okay. And you can reuse perlite. So since it's a rock, like it's a porous rock, so some plants respond to it, some plants don't, but certain things you can grow hydroponically in like this porous rock that you can then reuse again. So there's like little to no waste in some of these. Yeah. And some microgreen growers, I think, use perlite for certain crops and stuff like that.
Is that the same as that wool rock that you were showing me earlier?
No. So no, that's different. Perlite, I think, is like. I'm gonna say the wrong thing. It's gonna be. I think it might just be a naturally occurring rock that exists in the world that is porous.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The other stuff, so Rockwool, which is another like innovative hydroponic thing. So Rockwool is more for like hydroponic systems.
Gotcha.
But it is another new growing medium that's like hyper heated rocks that are spun, and it like literally becomes like rock cotton candy that you can plant seeds into. It holds water really well. So cool. Kind of that backs up what I was saying. Like, there's going to be, we're gonna figure out how to use some kind of waste product like nut shells or like coconut shells, or we'll be able as a society to like figure out the ways to use waste products to plant microgreens in, or to use it for mediums for agriculture and stuff like that that are more sustainable and stuff. I believe that that's definitely coming. I think that I was just listening to another urban agriculture podcast, and they were saying that they think that like they've seen a lot of innovation in urban agriculture, but like we're just at the beginning of that, right? Like
right.
Beyond Meat and all that stuff just started.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the percentage of the market that like vegetarian meat takes up in comparison to regular meat, which is a really small percentage, but like the amount of growth that it's seen is astronomical. And kind of to what I was talking about earlier, like we're not going to be able to feed people off microgreens. I think that urban agriculture is catching up in a lot of ways to like, how are we actually going to feed people? And it's not necessarily urban agriculture, just technology in farming and in our food, right? Like we're trying to figure out different ways to eat healthy.
Yeah, and that goes into like with fish and just like all like kind of our what our ecosystem is, right? Like we depend very heavily on fish being in the ocean, because those fish basically I mean, they eat the algae, but they also produce food for the algae, and like it's like a never-ending little cycle in the ocean, and that's where a lot of our oxygen comes from. And so, we're fishing, to extinction so many different things in the ocean right now.
Yeah, we are.
I know that there's tons of work being done in fisheries and different like artificial like places where they're just like growing fish and like harvesting them like just in buildings and in like hatcheries or whatever and so that's going to become bigger, I think.
Like aquaponics. Do you know about that? So like it's like like hydroponics.
I have heard about this.
But
they grow like the from the water that they grow the fish in. Grow the fish in, right? So it's like a closed system where the fish, whatever, feeds the plants, and the plants feed the fish, and it's whatever. I've looked into that. Like that's way beyond like me right now. Right.
But it's so cool to watch stuff about that. There's like there's ways to do it where the fish live in the tanks that the plants are in. But then there's also ways where they keep them completely separate. And like through piping and stuff like that, they're able just to like share the water between the two systems and stuff, and then like pick the plants that would feed the fish.
It's so perfect.
Crazy
like,
stuff.
It's like we're mimicking nature at that point.
Right. Exactly.
And that's how we're gonna have to continue going forward.
It is.
And it's weird. All of our artificial intelligence, when they're designing things, always have this like kind of like look of like, okay, that looks like a cellular structure, of this, or like, whatever it is that they're doing is usually based off of the physics of this planet and this universe.
Right. Right.
And like, this planet has been producing structures for, billions of years, and only the best ones are here now, you know?
Right.
And so it makes a lot of sense that like our technology now is creating based off of those physics, and they're obviously creating the same things that are already here. Right. Like we don't give a lot of credence to a lot of these different things, I think, because we just take them for granted, you know?
That makes sense.
We're like, oh, there's just a tree, it's just like, it's just how it grows, they're dumb, like they don't even got legs or nothing,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's that type of, synergy or symbiotic types of relationships. Okay, so I got something else for your left field that I was thinking about. Like, I had tried to write something about this years ago and then gave up on it, and then like I was gonna have my buddy build like architecturally design a building for me. I'm like, all right, can we like in this building? It'll be a big building, and like we'll have like cows like in the whole building, like right, and then we'll have like the ground, like the grass will just like revolve, like almost like like these like microgreens, but we're just growing grass on like a maybe like a 16-day cycle or something, so that they're like grass-fed cows, but they're inside. Because that way we can like kind of like suck up all of the methane that they're producing all day long too, because that's a huge greenhouse gas.
Right. Yeah.
23 times worse than carbon dioxide and all of that, But it's also a huge resource, Like we could use that natural gas to power the whole building with, And so like that would be like its own kind of symbiotic, like
like,
I love that.
Right? Yeah. And
do they capture methane?
They do.
Anywhere?
They do.
Okay.
Yes.
Like at landfills?
I think that they do in some landfills, but I know they do in some farms with cows too.
Okay.
Like they actually, it's really crazy. They have little gas backpacks on top of the like cows, like and then they fill up all day, and then they just like take it off, and then they like put it into their tanks. Yeah. And then they run all their electricity on their farm. They run off of the cows.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It seems inefficient that each cow needs its own unit. I'd like to get that into like like you're building like just do it all at once. But I also do like the idea of cows with backpacks.
Yeah, there's other ways that you could do it too, because like there's like in dairy farms, they're all in one building.
Right.
So you could feasibly do it that way.
Right.
A lot of them do it easier. They just use the manure, where they put like a certain bacteria in the manure, and then that bacteria breaks down the manure and produces methane. And then they just take that right off the top, and then they run their farm off of that too.
Interesting.
So, yeah. I remember researching this a lot at one point. I don't know. But then I was also thinking like, what if you like had like shut down all the subway systems, like in these bigger cities, and then just made it all grazing land for cows, right? They're all like under the city, and then that would like, and then all the roads.
You already have the holes there.
Yeah,
right? They're already contained.
They're already there. And then on the roads would just be all automated cars and shit. And then on top of that, you have a whole layer of like green space, like where people could live and like run and bike and work, just like and just have it so that like we just cover up like the whole like city like hustle bustle and all that, like I don't know. I mean, it would take a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Obviously, but like I would love to live in a city like that where like
Heck
I mean there's like all electric automated cars like underneath you, and then underneath them are all cows, and then like it's just like a cool kind of like a level system. And
symbiotic for sure.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
I'm so curious that like one day the subway system could be completely inefficient, and then there would be giant tunnels underneath the cities.
If they're all automated cars anyway, like why would anybody want to ride subway?
Right. That's such a curious concept to think that
they're talking about in 10 years like having subscription services, like 95% of people possibly just having subscription services to automated electric cars.
Yep.
And then just being like, yep, I just have my phone, my car tells me, it picks me up here, takes me there and drops me off, and then it continues picking people up.
Like I think that we're like 10 years from everything being an automated subscription service.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, for sure.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
We run one.
Yeah.
But symbiotic relationships, like a lot of farmers who are really smart, who know the science and have tried to do things a lot of different ways, have found, like specifically like maybe like vegan farmers or stuff like that, have found that you can get better production and you can do it with no carbon footprint if you use like animals and everything and rotate things properly and use everything as like you said to emulate it how nature is and not try to like make it exactly what's the best way for business. Like that's insane, right? Yeah. But there are ways to use animals and all the stuff to do it right. You know? And there's people who have changed their like. I think at one point there was maybe that wasn't maybe such like a good idea. Like we wanted to get away from like animal agriculture and stuff. Right. And I think that we do need to get away from like current agriculture. But I think that like a lot of modern farm science thinkers think that like using that whole symbiotic system is the best way to do it. I think that's what. Yeah.
Because I mean we're here with all these other plants and animals, you know. And we're all each other's resources, and when it comes down to it that way,
right? You know, yes, definitely. Exactly, right.
And we're all like the only energy source there is the sun, you know. Like between all of us, that's what we're all doing, you know. Right. It's pretty wild. I don't know, like, yeah. I felt like there was one other thing I was gonna say, and then I kind of it's slipping my mind right now. I don't know. Oh yeah, flying cars are gonna be pretty crazy. You hear about those?
Flying cars, man. No.
No.
No. I mean, I've heard of them.
It's like, yeah, right. It was like in the 1950s, in like an Art Deco, like you know, science magazine, I think. Yeah, we don't need to get into that right now.
I mean, I was curious about the flying cars.
Is it like is it confirmed like are they doing this?
Yeah, they're like they're supposed to be pretty big in the next 5 years. So they're saying. And so like if okay, so another part of this whole, you know, city puzzle that we're building right now, right? You have they're saying I think it was like 1/3 of all the land mass in a city is parking lots, okay? And if nobody is parking anymore in 10 years, right, you have 1/3 of the land that's available all of a sudden, you know? So you got green spaces, you got, a lot of people are saying we'll have little vertical takeoff and landings, flying car type spots, you know, for like little hubs like that, you know? Which, I mean, we have the space for it automatically built in now, you know? Yeah. There's a lot of ways that we could utilize that space, I think, you know. I guess that's all I was gonna say, but
yeah, that's crazy to think about too. About the parking lots and all that kind of stuff. After seeing what our acreage is like 0.07 acres or something that we live on here. Yeah. And it's a 400 square foot house. Yeah. And like just seeing the amount that we're able to produce here and like then thinking about what our footprint is like, okay, we can do better as a society than we're doing. I know that we can.
We need to, I mean, you guys' focus is like amazing though too. You know what I mean? Like I try to grow stuff and I'm just like, well, I'll grow it tomorrow. It's kind of rainy out right now. You know, like,
it's every day. It's every day.
Yeah,
it is. It is every day. It's a commitment.
Twice a day down here with these babies.
Morning and night.
But it's good for you. It makes you connect to like real things. You know?
It is. And I'm also someone who really I like daily practices. Right. Like something that you do every day. Yeah. Like that commitment. I really respect and think that that's seriously important. And so it's really
structure your day.
Yeah, it really structures my day. Yeah, it's hard for me to structure my day, and so I have to do that for myself. Yeah. And so it's really nice that I've been able to make that part of economically financial. I get to do this daily practice and I'm gonna get paid for this.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would love to marry those two worlds.
And that's that's the dream, right? It's like, what do I want to do every day?
Right. It is.
You know?
Right.
And then figuring out how to make that happen, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
You've been running ultra marathons and stuff like that, or
I tried to run one.
Okay. How far did you run?
I ran 70 miles.
God damn. Yeah, right.
Yep. I love it.
I've always been a runner, and I
know you do.
The farthest I've ever ran, I think, was 20 miles, like once. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but like
it's far.
It's far.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Like I ran across 2 counties or something like that. You know?
Yeah.
It's a lot of time.
Yeah. And especially to like build up. I mean, your bone density. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a wild part of it. You know?
Yeah.
That like. The fastest I ever ran was when I was 28, and like I signed up for like one of those Tough Mudder, 13-mile obstacle courses,
Sweet.
and like I knew that I would get my ass kicked if I didn't train, like
Sweet.
all summer like crazy.
Yeah.
So I trained like my ass off that entire year, up to that point. I even ran a 5K, and that was like my fastest 5K time I ever ran.
Sweet.
Was during that stretch.
Sweet.
But I was in the bike shop, and Missler was talking about how you've been running ultra marathons.
Oh yeah, I just talked to him the other day. I just took my bikes up there.
Nice. Yeah.
He asked me about it because he goes, "I forget your name, but I see you running around all the time." Yeah. He's lubing up our bikes and getting them ready for the year. Old XL Bike Shop in Norwalk.
Yeah, little shout out.
So last October did 70 miles. Yep. And then so I'm signed up already again to try it again.
Nice.
June 19th.
Did you run all 70 of the miles?
Pretty close.
Yeah. I've ran 13-mile races, and like, man, I am just beat the hell for a month after that. Like it's.
So it's at Mohican.
Okay.
And so. It's through the woods. Like, it's not on the roads.
How many hours is that?
It took me 19 hours to do 19, what I did.
Like, so you're running in the dark?
Cutoff. Yeah.
30, okay.
So if you can't do it in 32 hours, they kick you out. They're like, too slow. See ya.
Right, yeah. It's like, it's time to hang it up, man.
Yep. It started at like 5 a.m. and I ran till almost midnight. And I think that the average finishing pace for the average finisher was 27 hours. So the majority of people who did it
running over an entire day.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. I didn't make it that long.
Rain on them and sleet.
Oh yeah, it was bad in the morning.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
When I ran that Tough Mudder, it was just real cold. It was like 40 degrees. I was in Indiana. And I was just like, I did not want to be. And then like half the obstacles were like, all right, you got to jump in this big vat of water, swim under this thing and come out. And I was just like, fuck, man, that was. All right, so this reminds me of another thing. My brother loves to run too. Like we were both, grew up cross country and all that. And like he found this run once that was, we haven't ever done it. I always kind of wanted to, and I just thought of it right now. But like I think it was like, a couple brothers or some old guy like developed this like run that was just like basically it was like super like find the clue, and then it points you in the next direction to where you got to find the next one. Yeah. It's like a big giant search race.
Is it coordinates that it gives you, or is it like riddles?
Yeah, like I think they're riddles. I think this was like before GPS that they were doing this. That they came up with this.
Interesting.
And like you find like a book in like a a tree or something. You're like, there's a book here, and then you find a certain page number. Like something
crazy,
weird like that's happening. Like
crazy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crazy like there's like ones where there's just a starting line, like a starting point.
Okay.
And it's just who can get the furthest away from that starting point in 24 hours.
So you gotta like map out which direction.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna
go. So like it's not who can run the farthest. Like if you go all 50 miles out and get stopped and then have to turn around and
there's a mountain here.
Yeah, you're screwed. It's just who can get the farthest away from point in 24 hours and
That's
stuff like that.
That's pretty amazing. So like even strategizing where that starting point is crazy. You know, like how can we really mess people up? Like where are we gonna start this?
Right.
This is the middle of nowhere in the center of everywhere right now. Well, cool. I think that's a cool stopping point. Let's go around the yard a little bit and show me around.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, like you can maybe see we're just in a normal neighborhood here in Norwalk, and so there's obviously certain things you can do in a neighborhood when we're doing beds. So to do this bed, we've used a technique called sheet mulching. We laid cardboard down and like let it kill all the grass and let it sit for a while. And then we just took like a thin layer of soil and planted right on top of that. We did this last year, and we had this bed last year, and the plants grew fine. All the roots grow down through the soil. We did like radishes. We tried to grow peanuts over here last year,
Nice.
and we got lucky. Like we got good growth. It's not a good place to grow peanuts, Ohio.
Right.
So, but you can get them sprouted and stuff.
We could have done it if we knew how to grow them.
Yeah, like we could have.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. With a little, maybe getting different variety and stuff like that. But yeah, so we sheet mulched over here. We grew peanuts and radishes and some greens and a bunch of stuff over here. So it was a really good technique. It's very easy, like low maintenance way to do a bed in.
And no till, right?
No till, right. So the cardboard kills all the grass, and then you don't have to turn it all up, because once you lay that layer of soil down, even though maybe you only have 3 inches of soil, the soil, cardboard, and whatever all underneath of that kind of become your bed. Like all after a year of going through the winter, all that stuff breaks down, and it's just I don't know like how much cardboard we would even really find if we dug through there at this point 2 years later, you know?
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's kind of crazy.
Well, this is our herb spiral. We started this last year, all like just on our own. We dug these logs up out of the rivers, and we hand sawed them ourselves and pounded them into the ground. We really wanted something that we could just like
and it's
have as like a visual piece for people to see in our yard, that it doesn't all have to be, you know, flat beds like that.
Right.
Yeah, and
So we built this structure, and then we planted herbs in it. The actual original idea was to pump like a hose through this, so then the water would kind of run down this thing. And we didn't do that last year because time is crazy and a lot of things happen. But it's still a really cool structure to grow herbs in a neighborhood.
we're gonna try to do.
Here's our front yard, and Cass, when we first moved in here, she had like our normal landscaping area, like where you would normally have landscaping against the house, that we just did vegetables there rather than landscaping. And then each year we just kind of like took the beds out a little bit further, until we basically have no lawn on this side anymore. And we've grown tons of stuff in here. Swiss chard and anything you would do in a normal garden. Last year we basically didn't buy any vegetables, you know, like not really. Some from the farmer's market and stuff, because we like that stuff, but we basically ate Swiss chard for free for 6 months last year. It was awesome. Among other things. Lots of Swiss chard. And then, so another new experiment we're doing this year is this hydroponic system. We looked up a lot of different designs. We have a little smaller one over here that we kind of tested and played with, and we felt comfortable. So the idea is there's a tank down on the ground over there.
I need to.
It'll pump water up through this tube here, and you got these little cups here. Plants will go down in these cups. They'll go in this thing. All the water will flow through this little stream, and it returns back into the same tote that it was all coming out of, and there will be nutrients mixed in there, and that's our first hydroponic grow thing.
Yeah.